Let's get it straight right off the bat. The Razer Blade 15 2022 is a powerhouse of a gaming laptop. It shrugs off the latest games with an almost unconcerned disdain, and has some of the most powerful internals to match up to any task you can put it through. But for $2,999, you would expect that as Razer continues to release laptops at the most premium end of the pricing. They're certainly not cheap, but with prices ranging from $2,499.99 for an RTX 3060 and i7 to $12,800H model, there's plenty of choice for those shopping at the luxury bracket. That said, to really put this latest revision to the test, we put the 4K 144Hz i9 to 12900H configuration through its paces over the course of 3 weeks. Our conclusion: for folks with the money to spend, this is the best Razer laptop on the market. Much remains unchanged from that classic Razer Blade appearance here. You're still getting a solid matte black aesthetic, with the robust strength of an aluminum chassis. Everything feels locked and loaded, though there's still some considerable flex in the display, and the hinge does have a noticeable wobble to it. Still, that hinge is super strong and can be lifted with just a finger, without shifting the position of the lower half at all. Razer has upped the ante when it comes to ventilation this time around, so you'll find extra vents around the bottom of the chassis, and the keys are larger with less space between them as well. Looking at that keyboard in more detail, you'll also find that the power button has been relegated to the main deck. This is becoming more and more common in slimline designs, and it didn't pose any problems for me seeing as I'm used to a similar layout elsewhere. That meant it didn't take too much muscle memory to navigate around the delete and backspace keys, though this is something to bear in mind if you're new to the design. In classic fashion, the Razer Blade 15 eschews the fancy lighting and additional gimmicks of other machines, and takes aim at a far more subtle aesthetic. The simple black design belies an incredibly powerful machine underneath, and with a solid build quality, additional cooling attention, and a 2 kg weight, there's a quite power to this suave architecture. The new Razer Blade line focuses on the latest versions of NVIDIA's RTX 30 series graphics cards, piling in Intel's 12th generation Alder Lake processors to boot. That means there's some serious next-gen power under the hood here. Only the MSI, GE66 Raider and GS66 Stealth, Alienware X15R2 and X17R2, Asus ROG Zephyrus M16, and Gigabyte Aero 16 can pack that top-end card into their chassis at the time of writing, and all for a similar price point, though many without that 144Hz 4K display to boast about. If you're looking for this luxury performance, then the Razer Blade 15's features feel right for its price bracket. After all, the offerings go well beyond those bleeding-edge components, though some work harder than others to feel premium. You're getting upward-firing speakers straddling the keyboard here, and boy do they fire. I was incredibly impressed with the sheer volume available here, with room-filling sound and a surprisingly detailed soundscape on offer. Of course, they're competing with the fan noise if you're cranking this thing up to 11, but there's some excellent detailing in here. That 144Hz 4K screen is truly a sight to behold as well. Colors jump off this panel in Borderlands 2, and everything from autumnal landscapes to fiery hellscapes offered particularly strong clarity and detailing in Metro Exodus. The matte cover does dull the brightness a little here, but I was still able to appreciate even the darkest of set pieces in natural lighting. The Razer Blade 15 ships with 3 USB-A Gen 2 ports, 1 USB-C and Thunderbolt 4, another USB-C, 3.5mm audio jack, SD card slot, HDMI, and a lock, all balanced on each side of the frame. You'll also find a 230-watt power brick in the box, and I clocked full charge time to be between 1.5 and 2 hours without usage. This is where the feature set of the Razer Blade 15 slightly falls, though. Proprietary charging cables are a nightmare, and this laptop has the beast to rule them all. The Blade 15's charger is a bulky 2-pin affair, with a strangely heavy cable attached to the end. You won't be juicing this up on the go, and there's no hope of sneaking someone else's USB-C cable for a quick power-up either. You're paying for an RTX 3080 Ti machine here, so you can bet that performance is going to be strong. With all that cooling engineering under the hood, this thing absolutely flies. Cranking everything up in the Razer Synapse software, pushing both the CPU and GPU to their limits, I was reliably hitting 4K 60 in titles like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and just nudging that threshold in medium settings with some particle effects and textures dropped on heavier games like Metro Exodus as well. Nudging those settings up full whack on these more demanding experiences, however, we were still a little away from the dream. Red Dead Redemption 2 managed 27 FPS on its Ultra mode in 4K resolution, and Metro Exodus was tailing behind at 26 FPS. Lighter games were absolutely a sight to behold here, but it only took some tinkering to get a solid speed on the likes of Doom Eternal and Halo Infinite as well. The fans can certainly kick up a fuss when you do turn those dials up, but I've heard far louder machines doing far less work. Still, if you don't want to plug into one of the best gaming headsets to drown out those whirs, I was still getting some solid numbers from the balance preset. 1080p at 79 FPS in Ultra on Total War. Three Kingdoms certainly isn't to be sniffed at, and Red Dead Redemption 2 was still clocking 67 FPS and 1440p as well. In 2022, the Razer Blade 15 is still doing exactly what its ancestors did, leading in high-end components and luxury performance. All of that sits under a price tag that will cause mid-range buyers to flee, but feels reasonable for anyone looking to invest in the best of the best. Its $4,000 cost is difficult to stomach if you're just looking to jump into the odd round of Fortnite or relax with some city builders. But with other machines offering similar internal specs in this price range, the Blade 15 does a lot to make your money work harder for you. That 4K 144Hz display is certainly an outlier even in this high-end market, and the overall build quality and appearance can't be argued with either. Overall, I wouldn't recommend the vast majority of players sink their teeth into this bank-busting rig, but those on the hunt for the laptop to rule all laptops will find plenty of value here. However, if you're not quite hitting that $3,000, $4,000 price point, we'd recommend taking a look at the Razer Blade 14 for a similar aesthetic, but a slightly lower price tag. Or, we'd recommend those after a similar luxury build with some cheaper components. Take a look at the Asus Zephyrus G15 instead. Do you think my opinion is correct? If you have other thoughts, write them in the comments. I will definitely read them. Thanks for watching, have a nice day, and see you soon.